Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mellow Monday. I'm not mellowing out. I'm freezing out here. What's going on? It was 86 degrees yesterday, and now 46. What's that all about? It's all about being in early spring and having a record high temperature yesterday. That's what it's all about. Well, instead of griping about it being so cold, why don't we just thank God that we had some nice warm days here, and we can look forward to more of them to come. And also take a look at our psalm for this week, Psalm 116. Now, we're only going to do the first 4 verses and then the last verses 12 through 19. You might say, well, why are we skipping a bunch? Well, we'll get to that in just a second. First of all, Psalm 116 is part of a grouping of psalms that we talked about on Easter week. All right, the week leading up to Easter. Psalms 113 through 118, often called the Egyptian Hallel. They are the psalms that are recited during the Jewish Passover, and they're grouped together like that because they show a lot of the themes of giving thanks to God for deliverance from awful, terrible situations. And some of the psalms really do focus on God's deliverance of the people from Egypt. Others are kind of more general in nature. It could be any other kind of terrible situation you were in that God saved you from. And that's what's going on with Psalm 116. And what makes it so good, especially for we as Christians looking back, not only can we say, yeah, we get it, and there is very good reason why these are used during Passover to celebrate the people being delivered from slavery in Egypt. Now we've been delivered from the bondage of sin and death through Christ. So it's a very, very good psalm to be recited and sung, whatever you do in church during the Easter season. It starts out with like Psalms of Thanksgiving usually do, with an announcement that you're going to sing your praises. Then you say why you sang your praises, and then you give like a further commitment at the very end. I love the Lord because he's heard my voice and my supplications, because he inclined his ear to me. Therefore I will call on him as long as I live. You know what's really neat about those verses is there's some kind of crazy stuff going on with the Hebrew text that we don't capture in the English translation. And in fact, it's the very first 4 words that are kind of troublesome in a way. Troublesome in that, how do we translate this? Is it I love the Lord, or I love because the Lord has heard my supplications? Yeah, there's a world of difference between those two, and it depends on what text, ancient text you use, as to what translation you're going to get. Isn't that interesting? He inclined his ear to me. Literally, it's he stretched out his ear to me. In other words, he really cared enough to listen to me. He just leaned down like this, stick that right in the ear. Yeah, okay, let's not do that. So, that's what makes it so neat. The snares of death encompassed me. The pangs of Sheol laid hold on me. I suffered distress and anguish. Doesn't that sound like Jesus on the cross and then laid in a tomb? Then I called on the name of the Lord. Oh Lord, I pray, save my life. And guess what? God did. Okay, so that's the end of the psalm. Then we of the first part of the psalm, and then we have those ones that we're not going to do, but they go on and say some similar things, talk about the situation that it was rescued from. And now it ends with, what shall I return to the Lord for all his bounty to me? What's my response going to be to all this goodness? And here is where it becomes really meaningful for us as Christians, as well as our Jewish brothers and sisters, as they're lifting up that last glass of wine during their Passover celebration. I will lift up the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. Did you ever wonder why when we're having communion, the pastor stands up front, or the priest, whatever church you might be at, and they hold up the cup? I know we're using the small communion cups now, individual cups, and I hold that one up as I do the words of institution with the cup, with the blood of Christ. Yeah, we lift it up. It's because of this verse in this psalm, Psalm 116. That's the reason why we lift it up. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. Now, one last thing to talk about in this psalm, and this psalm is quoted in many ways throughout the New Testament. It truly is. But verse 15 is a verse that's not quoted in the New Testament. Why? Because it's kind of a tough one to translate. And there might be better translations than what you and I have in our Bibles right now. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his faithful ones. God likes that we die? What, is it just so we can go to heaven faster? No. You see, the word that's often translated precious has a wide range of meanings, and one of them is costly. That gem is precious. It's costly. It costs a lot. Well, costly in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints, the death of his faithful people. God doesn't like it any more than you and I do. And that all fits into this whole theme of God reaching out to save us from situations where death is almost inevitable. But because of Jesus' death on the cross, we look at that verse and say, no, it's not a verse saying God's going to now sweep us up into heaven and he's going to want us to all die real quick. No. It's that God cares enough that through death, he will lead us. He will lead us into his presence. God won't give up on us, and God will be with us in all those difficult situations in our lives. So the Common English Bible translated, I'm trying to remember the exact words, but for the Lord, the death of his faithful ones is very costly. Yeah, he doesn't like seeing it any more than you and I. So the rest of the psalm continues in this same vein, that because God has been so good and gracious to me, I will offer to you a thanksgiving sacrifice and call on the name of the Lord. Remember, this was written back when sacrifices were still being made in the temple. I will pay my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. In the courts of the house of the Lord, in your midst, O Jerusalem. Here we go. Praise the Lord. Great psalm for this week. Really, a great psalm to recite anytime. God's blessings be with you.